In 1985, a group of divers set out to explore the mysterious depths of Cape Kīnaʻu Cave off the coast of Maui. Armed with excitement and curiosity, they descended into the dark, twisting passages beneath the ocean. But as they ventured deeper, the cave's beauty turned into a trap. Visibility disappeared, air supplies dwindled, and panic set in. What happened next would change the course of their dive forever. How did they manage to survive the chaos? Cape Kīnaʻu Cave is located within the fascinating Kīnaʻu Natural Area Reserve, a protected region established in 1973 on the southwest coast of Maui, Hawaii. The reserve covers 1,238 acres of land and 807 acres of ocean, stretching along 3 miles of Maui's rugged coastline. Known for its unique natural environment, the reserve includes a striking lava field created by the most recent volcanic activity on the island. The rocky, rough terrain is mainly composed of pahoho lava, which originated from the Haleakala volcano's southwest rim zone. Cape Kīnaʻu Cave, hidden within this dramatic landscape, is a natural formation shaped by lava flows. The cave's location near the shoreline adds to its mysterious allure, as it sits amid the sharp and jagged volcanic rock that flows into the ocean. The coastal setting of the reserve offers more than just stunning views. It is home to thriving marine life, making it a popular spot for snorkeling and diving. However, beneath the surface, Cape Kīnaʻu Cave holds secrets of the volcanic past, preserved in the solidified lava walls that have formed over time. Moreover, to the cave, Kīnaʻu Natural Area Reserve also protects rare coral reef ecosystems and ankyline ponds, which are unique pools of water that are connected to the ocean underground. The reserve's importance lies in its mission to preserve the geological, cultural, and biological diversity of the area, making it a remarkable location for both explorers and scientists alike. On the morning of February 23, 1985, at 7:45 a.m., a group of divers gathered at Ed Robinson's dive boat on Maui Island, Hawaii. They were a mix of tourists, excited to experience the island's underwater wonders. The group consisted of John Baird, Tom Callan, Masao Nakan, and Preston Penny, who was 37 years old at the time. All 4 were certified in open water diving, but none of them had any formal training in cave diving, which requires a higher level of skill and preparation. They were excited for the adventure that lay ahead, not fully aware of the risks involved in cave diving. Ed Robinson, a seasoned dive instructor, led the group. He had explored Cape Kīnaʻu Cave before and was familiar with its layout. Along with him was his assistant, Sue, who would act as the safety diver for the day. The divers discussed their plan for the morning, and after considering a few options, they decided that their first dive would be at the cave located on Cape Kīnaʻu. The idea of diving into a cave thrilled the group, as it was something different from the open water dives that they had done before. The opportunity to explore the cave's hidden underwater tunnels and chambers filled them with excitement and anticipation. As part of their preparation, Robinson made sure that each diver had one underwater light. The light was crucial since caves are dark environments where visibility can drop to 0 without proper lighting. However, having just one light per diver wasn't ideal for cave diving, where backup lights and redundancy are standard practice. In addition to the lights, Robinson had planned to record the dive, capturing the entire adventure on video. The divers were eager to document their experience, imagining the thrill of watching themselves navigating the cave's mysterious depths later on. Now, although the divers were not specifically trained for cave exploration, their enthusiasm was undeniable. They had a deep thirst for discovery, eager to explore the uncharted parts of Maui's underwater world. The prospect of venturing into a lava-formed cave surrounded by ancient volcanic rocks sparked their curiosity. For them, this dive wasn't just about seeing beautiful coral reefs or colorful fish. It was about experiencing something that few others ever had. The cave was a mystery, a place where natural forces had shaped an underwater labyrinth that only the brave could enter. Although they were excited, they were not prepared enough for this kind of dive. While Robinson had experience and knew the cave, the divers did not have the skills and equipment they usually needed for a safe cave exploration. Cave diving is a special type of diving that involves going through narrow, dark passages, sometimes with little space to move or turn around. Without proper training, it can quickly become dangerous. As they prepared to dive, the divers may not have fully understood the challenges ahead. Their minds were focused on the thrill of the adventure, not on the risks involved in exploring an underwater cave. Sue, the safety diver, would follow the group from behind, ensuring that everyone stayed together and no one strayed too far from the group. With their gear ready, lights checked, and the dive plan set, the group was ready to begin their exploration of Cape Kīnaʻu Cave. What lay ahead was an underwater world unlike anything they had ever seen. Beautiful, but potentially perilous. Cape Kīnaʻu Cave, as described by divers familiar with its layout, and by those who survived the dive, had a relatively simple structure. The cave consisted of one main passage, known as the Trunk Passage, which had entrances on both ends. This main passage was wide and long, making it the primary route through the cave. Along the Trunk Passage, there were 3 side chambers: the Small Chamber, Turtle Chamber, and Deep Chamber. These chambers provided additional areas to explore, but also increased the complexity of the dive. The depth of the cave varied, with the deepest part located in the Deep Chamber, which reached around 90 to 100 feet underwater. This made it a challenging spot for divers, especially those with cave diving experience. The Deep Chamber was accessed through a narrow, tight passage, which required precise movement and control. For inexperienced divers, navigating this area could become dangerous due to the limited space and the need for careful maneuvering. One end of the Trunk Passage was particularly spacious, allowing up to 6 divers to swim side by side. However, as divers progressed through the cave, they encountered a much tighter section that connected the Trunk Passage to the Deep Chamber. This area was very narrow, requiring divers to carefully squeeze through the opening. Beyond this point, the cave opened up again into the Deep Chamber, but the narrow passage posed a risk, especially for those unfamiliar with cave diving techniques. The floor of the cave was covered in fine silt, which could easily be disturbed by careless movement. If the divers kicked up the silt, it could cloud the water, severely reducing visibility and making it difficult to navigate the cave. In underwater caves like Cape Kīnaʻu, maintaining visibility is crucial, as losing sight of the exit or other divers can quickly lead to disorientation. There was also a small exit, known as the Middle Exit, located partway through the cave. Sunlight could be seen through this exit, but only when divers were directly below it. This exit provided a potential escape route, but it wasn't always easy to spot, especially in murky conditions. Beyond the Middle Exit, on the same side of the main passage, were the 3 chambers, all lined up in sequence: the Small Chamber, Turtle Chamber, and finally, the Deep Chamber. Each of these chambers added a layer of complexity to the dive. While they were interesting areas to explore, they also increased the risk of divers becoming lost or separated from the group. Without proper planning and communication, navigating through the chambers could lead to confusion, especially in the dim, confined spaces of the cave. The dive at Cape Kīnaʻu Cave began with careful preparation. But as the group descended into the depths, things quickly took a dangerous turn. All the divers were equipped with 80 cubic foot cylinders filled to 3,000 psi, a standard air supply for open water dives, but risky for cave diving, where extra air is often needed due to the challenging environment. Leading the group was Ed Robinson, a skilled diver who was also filming the dive. His assistant, Sue, stayed at the rear as a safety diver, making sure that no one fell behind. The plan was simple. They would enter the cave, explore the chambers, and stop at the Middle Exit for an air check. If anyone's air supply dropped below 1,500 psi, they would abort the dive and head back to the boat. This check was crucial because diving in a cave meant limited opportunities to surface for air. At the Middle Exit, the divers did their check, and everything seemed to be in order. All the divers still had more than 1,500 psi, so they decided to continue deeper into the cave. As they reached the Deep Chamber, the situation began to change. The chamber was the deepest part of the cave, with depths of up to 100 feet. The pressure here was higher, meaning that the divers were using more air at a faster rate. Tom Colan was the first to notice that something was wrong. Checking his gauge, he realized that he was down to 600 psi, much lower than expected. Nervously, he signaled to Robinson that he wanted to exit the cave. At the same time, John Baird checked his own air supply and saw that he too was at 600 psi. To make matters worse, visibility in the cave was deteriorating. The once clear water had become cloudy with silt, kicked up by the divers' movements, making it harder to see and navigate. Robinson quickly realized the danger they were in. With visibility dropping and 2 divers low on air, the priority was to get out as fast as possible. He led Kolan and Baird toward the 3rd entrance, which was closest. The path to the exit was narrow, and the silt clouded everything, making it hard to see where they were going. As they swam, Kolan's sonic alarm went off, a sign that his air supply was critically low. In a panic, he signaled to Robinson that he was out of air. Robinson acted fast, sharing his air with Kolan as they continued to swim toward the surface. By the time they reached the surface, only Baird had any air left. Just 100 psi, barely enough to breathe. Meanwhile, the situation inside the deep chamber was growing worse. The silt in the water had turned visibility to almost 0. The divers could no longer see each other clearly. They could only make out the faint glow of the lights from the others. Sue, acting as the safety diver, realized that they needed to get out immediately. She signaled for the others to exit the chamber before it was too late. Masao Nakan managed to exit, but he struggled at the narrow restriction between the chambers. Preston Penny, however, was in more serious trouble. Penny, already struggling, had to be pushed through the tight passage by Sue, who was also fighting against the thick cloud of silt that had enveloped them. Once they had exited the deep chamber, Nakan and Sue headed toward the middle exit. They were able to get out of the cave, but something was wrong. Preston Penny had not surfaced with them. Robinson, now on the boat, quickly realized that a diver was missing. Without hesitation, he grabbed an extra air cylinder and dove back into the cave, determined to find Penny. The cave was now in chaos, with visibility almost completely gone, and the tight restrictions made it hard to move. Robinson searched through the silty water, feeling his way through the passages as he looked for Penny. After a few tense minutes, he found him, but Penny was unresponsive. Robinson brought him back to the surface as quickly as he could, but it was already too late. Despite efforts to revive him, Penny could not be resuscitated. He had drowned in the cave, likely overwhelmed by the lack of visibility and his dwindling air supply. The tragedy that unfolded in Cape Kīnaʻu Cave could have been prevented had the divers been more prepared and followed proper safety protocols. When Preston Penny was found at the bottom of the cave, he still had his camera in one hand and a light in the other, but his air tank was empty. His gear was in place, yet the lack of air meant that he could no longer survive in the depths. Even though the visibility in that part of the cave was good, it wasn't enough to save him. This tragic loss highlighted the many critical mistakes made by the diving team. They also had a bad plan for managing their air supply. They did not follow the simple rule of keeping 2/3 of their air supply for the return trip. By the time that they had checked their air at the middle exit, some divers were already using too much air. This put them in a dangerous situation as they went deeper into the cave. Without a rope to mark the way back, the divers were at risk of getting lost in the maze of passages, especially as it became harder to see. The lack of coordination between the team members also made it more dangerous. When things started to go wrong, it became clear that the group hadn't adequately prepared for such a situation. There was confusion, and decisions were made under pressure, increasing the risk for everyone involved. As Prosser, an expert in cave diving, pointed out after the incident, this was an accident waiting to happen. It was fortunate that the entire team didn't perish that day. The dive was filled with risks from the start, and these risks were compounded by the group's lack of experience and poor planning. One important lesson from this tragedy is the need to be extremely cautious when embarking on hazardous adventures, especially with people you don't know well. Each diver in the group had their own experience level and approach, and this lack of familiarity made it harder to work together as a team. In some cases, it may even be safer to tackle such challenges alone, where you are solely responsible for your own safety and decisions. In the end, the Cape Kīnaʻu Cave incident serves as a powerful reminder of the dangers that can come with cave diving. Proper training, preparation, and safety protocols are essential to ensuring a safe and successful dive. When these are overlooked, the consequences can be devastating. as seen in the loss of Preston Penny. As we conclude this tragic tale of the 1985 Cape Kīnaʻu Cave diving incident, we are reminded of the harsh realities and dangers that lie beneath the surface. This story is an example of how lack of preparation and experience can lead to devastating consequences. Let this serve as a lesson to all explorers and adventurers. Safety, training, and proper planning must always come first. In 1995, a group of 8 trained divers gathered in Tulum, Mexico for an exciting day of cave diving. They submerged below Tulum into the underwater caverns and traveled through the columns and walls of limestone. By the end of the day, only 5 divers would make it back to the surface alive. The peninsula of Yucatan, located in the southern region of Mexico, is home to over 6,000 cenotes, caves filled with crystal clear water. Because of its beauty and proximity to the Caribbean coast, they've become a major tourist destination, attracting divers from around the world, beginners and experienced alike. The name cenote comes from the Mayan language, meaning water well. These wells were considered vital and sacred to the Mayan people. They were a source of water, a source of life. The Mayans also used them as a portal to speak to the gods. In fact, the skeletal remains of over 120 people were found in one cenote alone, although it is unknown when and how they died. The cenotes connect to an underground cave system, a labyrinth of kilometers-long tunnels. All of these systems, at some point, connect to the sea. This provides the cenotes with a mix of both fresh water from rainfalls and salt water from the ocean. The zone in which fresh and salt water meet is known as a halocline. It creates a murky and dense blur that distorts a diver's view. Diving into the caverns of a cenote is what's known as cave diving. It's classified as an overhead environment dive, meaning there's structures above you. This differs from standard scuba diving or open water diving, in which all you need to do is travel up to surface. In overhead environment dives, you have to either go forward, go backward, or hope that there's a sliver of an air pocket in the case you run into trouble. It requires different types of equipment. This difference is what makes cave diving so dangerous, especially for those not trained in it. Once you begin your dive into the cenotes of Yucatan, you're given a choice. You can stay within the limits of the cavern lines, which are permanent rope guidelines, or you can travel further into the cave system. If you choose to travel beyond the main cavern limits, there is a chance you may not make it back to the surface. The summer of 1995 was a busy one for Maria and her husband Harry. Their dive shop in Cozumel, Mexican divers, had received several calls looking for a guided tour of the Yucatan cenotes. They began planning the logistics of such a tour. Though they were trained open water divers, Maria and Harry had no experience in cave diving. They decided to hire a guide, or dive master, local to the area they would explore, Tulum. They found Juan, an open water instructor. He agreed to take the group to 2 of his favorite cenotes that he was familiar with. With a tour guide in place and the diving location set, all that was left to do was wait. On August 17th, the group of 8 divers met at Grand Cenote, 5 kilometers north of the town of Tulum. Along with Harry, Maria, and Juan were 3 Dutch, an Italian, and an American woman. Though trained in open water, none were certified for cave diving. The divers strapped on their equipment, jumped into the open mouth of the cave's entrance, and traveled into the clear, blue waters below. The waters were warm and the depths relatively shallow. The group was filled with excitement. They were diving in such a place of beauty. This may have been the most beautiful dive they had been on their entire life. Juan had made this happen. They respected their dive master and placed their trust in him. After spending almost an hour at Grand Cenote, they were ready for their next dive. Just south of Grand Cenote was Cenote Calavera, or the Temple of Doom. The group piled out of their taxis and approached the entrance. In front of them was what looked like a giant skull, a large mouth-like entrance with 2 smaller holes behind. After a resupply and re-equip, they began. One by one, they jumped into the mouth of the skull and down into the water below. Looking back, they saw the sun shine through the openings, a beautiful sight underwater. A ladder, which looked like it had been put there by the Mayans themselves, was the only exit. Juan led the group of 8 through the main section of the cenote. Harry took up the rear. The main section is a large 360-degree area, a radius of around 366 meters. The floor reaches a depth of 14 meters. Many tourists and even experienced divers stay within the cavern limits, but Juan had other plans. As they traversed further into the caverns, they became surrounded by limestone walls and columns dripping from ceiling to floor. This was no open water dive. Juan led them further. They traveled into the Madonna Passage, a tunnel leading to the kilometers-long cave system. The tunnel was past the main caverns, past the guidelines, and past the sign. The sign reading, "Stop, prevent your death, go no further." They were not far into the passage when Harry, moved by panic or premonition, retreated back to the entrance. None of the other 7 noticed he was gone. Juan, despite his responsibility, never looked back. The further they went, the colder it got and the harder it became to see due to dwindling light and halocline interference. All the while, their oxygen supply was continually decreasing. The group continued swimming. They were beginning to panic, frightened by the diminishing oxygen, unsure if they were being led on an adventure or led to their death. After several minutes in the passage, Juan finally looked back at the group and noticed that only 3 divers were left with him. They were low on oxygen. He himself was low on oxygen. Harry waited at the entrance for his wife and the others. It seemed like hours had passed. Should he go back down? Then, a diver resurfaced. It was the Italian, then 2 more, Dutch divers, then a third, Juan. Without explaining, Juan took Harry's partially full tank and traveled back down to the passage. Every second mattered. He swam through the main cavern, through the columns and walls, arriving at the signs. At the entrance, he saw that the seconds no longer mattered. 2 divers out of air, 2 divers dead. There was no more hope for them. He knew there was 1 left. He traveled further down the passage, and between the walls he found them. The 3rd diver, it was Maria. She was out of air, but still alive. Harry was now outside the entrance, fearing that his wife was gone. He continued looking back at the ladder leading into the skull's mouth. Waiting. The minutes continued to pass by when the splash of a diver surfacing caused Harry to rush to the opening. Juan, the ladder, carrying Maria. She was not breathing. He quickly pulled off her equipment and began CPR. A vehicle arrived to rush Maria to the Red Cross station in Tulum. There was hope, but Juan was seconds too late for Maria, too. She was pronounced dead at the station. Juan retrieved the bodies of the other 2 divers, one of the Dutch tourists and the American woman. The death of 3 divers lay in the hands of an untrained dive master. Juan was never charged with a crime, though many believe his actions should be considered manslaughter. He took a group of divers into dangerous caverns without the proper equipment and without the proper training. The deaths led to pain and anger throughout the Yucatan Peninsula. Dive shop owners and instructors in Yucatan and Cozumel were outraged by the incompetence of Juan. How could he lead this group knowing he wasn't properly trained? They were moved to action. They formed an association to develop a list of safety policies and procedures for diving in the cenotes. Those policies have influenced the training and practices of instructors and shops throughout the area. This story is unfortunately not unique. So many divers have suffered the same fate underwater, especially in the cenotes of Yucatan, where divers, many untrained and inexperienced, continue to lose their lives to this day. The number 1 cause of death for cave diving is suffocation, which amounts to 2 things: improper gear and improper training. Without the right training, you can get lost and find yourself surrounded by the unknown